Welcome to all the Susanville, California residents who have gathered tonight for this monumental occasion, the world premiere of the documentary entitled Small Town Big Symphony. My name is Pete Wade, and just a few months ago, my brother Ben Wade invited me out to Susanville, California with my cameraman Jack Hooper to try to capture this whole story on tape. Now, for years, my brother talked about this wonderful symphony orchestra that he had helped foster and all the great people in the town, and we kind of understood what an exciting story it was. But we never could really grasp what a huge story it would be until we saw it in person. So when we came out in 2007 in December, we actually got to live a little piece of history in Susanville by filming the symphony, meeting the members, getting to know the townspeople, and it was just a wonderful, absolutely wonderful event. So tonight, this is our gift back to the city. We want to show you how we've embodied the entire spirit of this symphony orchestra and what a tremendous story it is. And we hope this spreads all across the nation and that everybody gets to see what Susanville, California and the symphony is all about. So enjoy.
To residents and visitors alike, Lassen County, California is the quintessential outdoorsman's paradise. Every season offers the perfect venue for numerous recreational activities. The tranquility of Lake Almanor and scenic beauty of Lassen Volcanic National Park and Forest has long attracted sightseers. A long list of celebrities have called this part of the country home. Hollywood actors Richard Crenna, Kurt Russell, Goldie Hawn, and Frank Cady, as well as NASCAR driver Mike Skinner and pro wrestler Kim Shamrock. The centerpiece of Lassen County is the sleepy town of Susanville, California, nestled in the mountains 4,300 feet above sea level, just beyond the northern reaches of the Sierra Nevadas and south of the Cascade Mountain Range.
According to the last official U.S. Census, Susanville had a population of about 13,541, with 9,000 males and only about 4,500 females, which is very atypical for any city in America.
This unusual imbalance can be directly attributed to one key factor: the presence of the high desert state prison, where half of the male population of Susanville is incarcerated.
The prison opened in 1995 and houses 4,800 male inmates, so the true population of Susanville is only about 8,700. In fact, there are 3 prisons in the area that account for 11,000 Lassen County residents.
The 1,500 employees of the prison system, along with those who work in the field of forestry, account for the greatest impact in local employment, replacing jobs of physical labor that drove this town in the early 1900s. But there is one astounding reason this town is unlike any other its size. Susanville, California is the smallest town in America with their own symphony orchestra.
Williamsburg, Virginia has one. Hershey, Pennsylvania has one. Of all the towns under 15,000, that's it. No one else has their own local orchestra. And Susanville is 3,300 residents smaller than Williamsburg, so it's a modern miracle that they can keep it going from year to year.
But how did this remote part of California transform from the Wild West to a place of unparalleled culture? Peter Lassen was the first settler in the area, immigrating from Denmark in 1840. but it was the gold rush of the 1850s that brought the population to the eastern end of Lassen County.
At that time, the area unofficially belonged to Nevada. It wasn't considered part of California until the 1860s.
One notable resident was 32-year-old Isaac Newton Roop, who would later become the governor of the Nevada Territory. He founded what was known as Roop Town in 1854. Within a few years, Roop decided to rename the town after his beloved daughter, Susan.
It's been known as Susanville for about 150 years now. Susan Roop lived the rest of her life and died in 1921 when she was buried in the local cemetery.
The fleeting gold rush wasn't enough to sustain a small town. It was instead the timber industry that would provide the greatest influx of population. In the early 1900s, logging and later mining and agriculture would bring people to western Lassen County and firmly establish Susanville as a town that would last. The year is 2001. The logging and agricultural industries have virtually disappeared in this part of California. Local employment has been replaced by the extensive prison system, and the local community college had played a part in further solidifying the success of Susanville as a town.
The median age in Susanville is right around 32, with the national average at 35, so it's definitely a young town. Lassen College has been a small contributor to the youthfulness of the area.
In fact, the small college would bring new life to the town in more ways than one. In the fall of 2001, a charismatic force named Ben Wade was hired as the new women's soccer coach. A young man with a passion for athletics was blessed with remarkable musical ability and sincere appreciation for classical music. Longtime resident Dana Hirsch didn't know the new guy in town. She had moved with her family from Sacramento in 1976 as a young violinist from the age of 10. But leaving her old youth orchestra, she had to give up playing because there were no string teachers in the area.
My dad actually was in the government, and we got transferred here from Sacramento, California. And I was in high school, and my folks always said that, they never regretted moving here except for the fact that I had to stop playing music. So 22 years later, I decided I wanted to start again, started taking lessons again, and just kind of worked right into what we're doing right now.
Dana married a local jeweler named Kurt Hershey. A classical music organization was the furthest thing from his mind.
I do own a business with my husband Kurt, and we own a jewelry store. I've been in ownership for 19 years in the store.
Originally from Indio, California. My dad took a job up here, Leslie's Jewelry, back in 1970. This is my 29th year, and pretty much been in the jewelry business my whole life. They just put me back here in the corner, and I just make and create and repair jewelry all day long. 6 days a week, that's pretty much it, and they just kind of take care of everything else. So,
An invaluable asset to Susanville was the Hooper family, with Paul playing trombone, Elizabeth playing clarinet, and Deborah playing flute. Paul followed his older brother John with a scholarship to the University of Oregon. Their father Keith would become a founding father of the Susanville Symphony, and eventually Elizabeth would become the fifth member of the family to join. Ray White was yet another talented individual who found his way to Northern California. Dentistry was his career, but playing French horn was his gift, earning him a full scholarship to college.
I was looking for a place to set up or get a practice or purchase a practice, and you can purchase practice like real estate. So it's kind of like I had a broker who said, "What do you want to be?" And I said, "Well, better yet, tell me what's the best practice you have for sale." So it ended up being Susanville. I'd never even heard of Susanville.
Ray would open one of the most successful practices in the United States and built his dream house nearby. It would become the ultimate location for post-concert parties. Ben Wade and Ray White began working together musically after forming a quintet, one that included another founding member, Eric Tabes, a master of the clarinet with a rich tone and impeccable training. Meanwhile, Dana Hershey returned to violin 2 decades after moving to Susanville, taking lessons under the direction of the future concert mistress, Carol Fontana. They formed a local string group, and the cornerstones for a future orchestra were now firmly planted.
There were a few, splintered groups, maybe, a trio here, a quintet there. But once we got everybody together, it was an amazing thing. And it's been amazing evolution.
We were doing little musical groups around here as like a quintet and a string trio. And then Ben came to town and saw there was a lot of musicians in the area.
Ben Wade had just completed his first season as Lassen College's women's soccer coach. The most impressive accomplishment in his life was setting the world kayaking record along the Central and South American coast. The unbridled thrill seeker had a new conquest on his radar, something else that had never been done before: creating a symphony orchestra made up of locals in a town of less than 10,000. Dana suggested this very idea to her violin instructor, Carol Fontana.
And I'd been bugging her for years. I was playing a group, we need a group. And we kind of had put a small string group together, but, nothing on a bigger scale. And she said that she'd heard that the soccer coach at the college was going to put the symphony together.
The word was getting out. This soccer coach wasn't merely an athlete. He had been raised in a family blessed with tremendous musical talent. Both sons were trained by their mother in classical piano. Ben's older brother, a concert violinist, and Ben himself, one of the best trumpeters in the country, carefully trained by his father. In December of 2002, Ben held a meeting in the Lassen College cafeteria and started the ball rolling.
I had kind of eschewed music for about 8 years, having given up playing the trumpet, and I came here in 2001 just to coach the women's soccer team. And I found that there was no classical performing organization in the county. Nothing. They did not have a music program at the college, period. And I thought, we have to have some type of music. So I formed a brass quintet. A woodwind quintet came to me and said, hey, do you want to play trumpet in our quintet? And I said, sure. I saw this little string group playing, and I thought, we almost have an orchestra. We have 18 people here. So I asked them, would you be interested in doing this? And they all said, absolutely.
We're all shaking in our boots. Ben's there. He's being very serious because he wanted to do this really bad. And I don't know if anyone really thought that it could survive.
I think, for whatever reason, there was a convergence of factors. We had some people in the community doing brass band, people in the community doing concertos. We had these little groups of people who were doing what they did with their arts. And a group came together, and Ben Wade happened to be the catalyst.
The first incarnation of the symphony would be as a community orchestra bearing the Lassen College name. Ben Wade was a natural leader in the group, but he was a musician, not a conductor, nor did he want to be.
So we started practicing January 2003. I'd never conducted in my life before that. And I told the orchestra, hey, anybody want to come here and direct? I don't want to. I'd rather play in the orchestra.
The fledgling group practiced 4 months before their first concert. It was May 7, 2003, when Lassen Symphony Orchestra first took the stage. Ben Wade was 31. They sold concert tickets at a bargain price. They weren't trying to make a profit. They were simply trying to raise money so they could buy more music for the next concert.
We had the Methodist church book so that we could play, and we were going to charge $5 a head. We got to that concert, and the whole church was packed, and I think all of us were surprised. When we got finished, they just jumped up and did the standing ovation. At that point, we kind of knew, wow, we got to keep this going.
success story was in motion, but money was hard to come by. Symphony members and citizens would have to volunteer their time and services. The star French horn player Ray White would serve as the design and print coordinator.
Yeah, well, starting out, we were just passing the hat. Essentially, literally, there was a hat in the back. So we had our first concert was like, anyone want to donate a little money? To buy music. That's what we did. So, and then we saw there was an interest.
Despite all the excitement of the first concert, many were troubled that not a single representative from the community college had bothered to come to the church for the town's historic event.
There were no deans. There was no administration. There was no board. I'm like thinking this is the biggest thing in Lassen County, sold out, one performance only.
But this cloud indeed had a silver lining. It didn't deter the group, it motivated them.
So the major players in the group all met uptown at the St. Francis restaurant with a close friend, Victor St. Marie. And he was actually the first one to suggest leaving the college and pursuing the formation of a symphony.
Victor St. Marie was a beloved local resident and personal friend of Ben Wade's. A cosmopolitan man, he had traveled all over the world and was very well cultured.
He said, you guys need to form a nonprofit organization. And we were all just like, really? Do you think that we could? Is this possible? Can we do this? So Victor and I single-handedly wrote the bylaws for the symphony in one weekend, 14 hours both days. And we formed a board and became a nonprofit. We thought it's really ambitious if we gave 5 concerts a year, maybe 4.
The Susanville Symphony had been founded with 2 primary purposes: to provide a classical music venue for musicians and audiences, and to make a cultural impact on northeastern California.
We were going to sell season tickets. I thought 80, 85 for the first year. I'd be really impressed. We sold like 192 for the first year, and we've just gone up ever since. Just crazy. This year, I think right now we're at about 475 memberships.
There was such public demand for tickets, each concert had to be performed twice to accommodate hundreds of fans in such a small venue. Eventually, they would expand to 3 performances with 5 productions every year. Meanwhile, the trumpeter turned conductor developed tremendously as the leader of the group.
When I first met Ben, there was a great trumpet player that was pretending to conduct, who had the personality and flair, and I've seen him blossom in his conducting. And I've seen his skill in that area develop. And the symphony has grown.
The year 2004 was monumental for the orchestra, with the valuable acquisition of talented musicians. Tiana Hepner-Harjo played viola in the Reno Philharmonic, 86 miles southwest of Susanville.
I was 12 years old and I actually wanted to play the cello. We had to choose orchestra, band, or choir in elementary school. I didn't want to be a band geek and I didn't want to sing, so therefore I was stuck with orchestra. And I wanted to play the cello. My mom wouldn't let me carry it home because I had to walk 4 miles home from school. And I didn't want to play the violin because it was too squeaky, so therefore I ended up with the viola and stuck with it ever since.
She joined the Susanville Symphony in 2004 during their first full season and started commuting between the 2 cities.
I've been a contract player for 4 years now, and I've played with them for almost 10. I got a call saying they needed a viola player. We're looking for a viola player, and had nothing better to do that weekend. So I was like, okay. Me and a couple of my friends came up here, and we've been coming back ever since.
Recruiting a professional was one thing, but no one could have predicted the future impact of a quiet 7th grader who had exclusively trained as a pianist.
I'm Sarah Qualley. I play the cello. I started piano in the 3rd grade, and then I fell in love with composing piano music in the 4th grade. And Carol Fontana came up to me one day and she said, "We need a cello." And I was like, okay. So I started playing when I was in the 6th grade because we didn't have any cellists in Susanville.
The Qualley family moved to Susanville in the early 90s. Susan Qualley was an active parent volunteer, becoming vice president of the symphony and organizing ticket sales.
I was born in Santa Clara County. We moved here when I was 2 or 3, so I've grown up here in this community. I love it.
With high school seniors graduating every year and leaving for the outside world, it's fortunate that some of the young musicians actually return to their hometown.
I'm Ashlyn Martin. I play the oboe. I live in Reno and I run a substance abuse clinic. I played the clarinet for 3 years and then I picked up oboe my 7th grade year. I moved away when I was 17. I went to college in Reno and I got my bachelor's, and then I moved to Arizona for 2 years and then I came back.
The younger generation certainly made their mark, but there were equally important contributions from veteran musicians, most notably a former military officer who started playing drums in 1938.
My name's Dick Bendix. I'm a percussionist in the Susanville Symphony. I play the timpani. I spent 37 years in the Army and retired as a brigadier general. I spent the last 7 years of my career at the Pentagon. I was a project officer for a couple rather large computer projects, and then the last 3 or 4 years I worked in the Secretary of Defense's office with Mr. Weinberger and Mr. Carlucci, who was the Secretary of Defense and Assistant Secretary.
Formerly a member of the U.S. Army, General Bendix moved to the rural community in 1997, trading his work with the United States Secretary of Defense for a job as the Secretary of the Susanville Symphony.
What brought me to Susanville was my high school sweetheart. We dated exclusively in our junior and senior years. When we graduated, we both went our separate ways. She went to one college, I went to another. After being apart for 40-some years, I came back and started attending our high school reunions, which I was unable to do while we were stationed in Virginia at the Pentagon. I always came up to this area deer hunting every year. I both archery hunt and rifle hunt. So one day on a whim, I called her up and I said, "Are you with anybody?" And she says, "In Susanville? No." So I says, "Well, why don't we meet for lunch?" And we did, and that sort of started and rekindled the romance, and a year or so later we were married, and we'll be married 10 years next May. Some people gave me some names of some Western bands and rock bands, and I tried out for them, but I've never played that kind of music. I was raised in the big band era. There's a lot of good drummers in town, but when it comes to reading music, that's something they haven't followed. And then the word got out that I could read music, which immediately put me in demand for the Messiah. And then when the symphony started, I was sort of like a shoo-in because I could read music.
Now that Ben Wade had capable musicians under his care, he decided to explore the world of composing during the first season.
I feel like I'm almost like a Haydn. Haydn said that the reason for his success was because he was able to do his own thing. He was isolated at the court of Esterházy in Hungary, and he said, "I can do whatever I want to. I can write the music, my orchestra has to play it, and the audience has to listen to it, and I can experiment on what sounds good and what sounds not so good, and how the audience reacts to it." And I kind of feel like that because I'm isolated here in Susanville, and whatever I write, the orchestra has to play, and the audience has to hear it, and kind of judging from the way it sounds and the way the audience reacts is kind of how I can explore my own pieces.
Ben has indeed pursued his dream in a prolific manner, writing roughly 50 pieces in his first 5 seasons.
I base it on maybe Russian-sounding pieces because I love the Russian composers. And so I wrote my first symphony. It took me 3 weeks, and then after that it was unleash the hounds I continue to write pieces. I think one of my goals is to go to another country, study their folk tunes, and then write Symphony No. 2, the Croatia Symphony, Symphony No. 3, the Italian Symphony, Symphony No. 4, Japanese. I like to study all these cultures of music and then write a symphony about each one. And it's kind of been done. You know, you see the Italian out in Algiers, you see Capriccio Italiano, you see, you know, some of these things, but I would like to write a symphony just about almost every single culture out there and go stay there for 3 weeks, a month, collect all the data, get inspired, and then write a symphony about it.
With 3 maximum security facilities fueling the local economy, Susanville had earned the unwanted moniker of Prison Town. Despite its abhorrence of the stereotype, the prison industry has unintentionally brought a number of first-rate musicians to Lassen County. In 1984, Matt Mullen gave up the city life in the San Francisco Bay Area, where he worked at San Quentin State Prison. Moving to the quiet countryside, he began work at the High Desert State Prison, where he is now the associate warden.
Right now I'm running the business operations side of the shop out at the California Correctional Center.
Matt had found the ideal place to raise a family, but he encountered one major drawback. As a musician, there was a complete void of instrumental groups in the area.
I walked away from a lot of things. I was really active in a lot of different music performance related activities down there, in bands and orchestras. And I came to Susanville at the time. There really wasn't any genres here that I could participate in.
Eventually, the warden would become president of the Lassen County Arts Council, promoting cultural development in the Susanville area.
It's really an art advocacy organization. It tries to advocate for all the 3 major disciplines, performing arts, visual arts, and literary arts. That being the case, we try to help them as best we can with marketing, supplement what they're already doing. So the symphony is putting out information to its members. We're putting out information about the symphony to our membership. I think if we were to compare a list, it's almost one and the same, but as an advocacy organization, that's what we try to do.
When the Susanville Symphony formed their inaugural organization, Matt became the group's tuba player and began conducting the Susanville Swing Band. An honorable man, he refused to accept money for any of his numerous contributions.
True enough, I've actually been offered money from the symphony to do certain project work, and I always turn it down. I want the symphony to keep every bit of money that it can make, so that we can maybe someday create our own performing arts center. And I don't want to have anything to do with slowing that process down one bit, because everything I get from the working with the symphony is, as a performer myself, as a musician, an opportunity to bring a newer level of enrichment to the people of Lassen County that just really wasn't there. At least it wasn't available in the local community.
John Jocelyn was another musician whose involvement with the prison brought him to Northern California. He moved to town in 2000 as a social worker with Child Protective Services. He also happens to be an experienced double bass player.
I am a social worker at the prison. I work for a nonprofit agency, and I work as a liaison between inmates and their families, dealing with different issues that might come up.
Lassen County is an area of California where 1 in 6 live below the poverty level. In contrast, even more families are multi-millionaires, and much of the wealth and culture is unrelated to the top brass who run the California prison system.
You could say, okay, well, the affluency, where did it come from? Well, a lot of the people in the symphony had nothing to do with the prisons. And there was quite a bit of talent that was here aside from the prisons. It's a fair blend.
The loose connection between the correctional system and symphony volunteers is one of a number of unique characteristics. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect is the interaction between the conductor and the audience. Surprisingly, the maestro's conversations with his spectators were not concocted as a gimmick. Their origins were actually born out of necessity.
And my mom said, "Are you kidding me? A Russian playing the Tchaikovsky piano concerto? It's a no-brainer. Nobody can play Tchaikovsky, especially this one, like a Russian." The very first time we played, Our orchestra was not good enough to play an entire set, and so we had like 25 minutes worth of music. We can't have a 25-minute concert. I'm gonna have to sit here and talk about the pieces. I'm gonna have to fill it up. What you see tonight and me interacting with the audience all the time is not because we don't have enough music, it's because it evolved into what it is now. And so in the beginning, I would give the history of pieces and talk about why we're playing them, what the composer thought, what they should imagine when they're listening to the piece of music. And it was instantly that the audience just gravitated and sucked in towards what I was saying. And we had so many people say, I love it when you say things about the pieces because it ties me into the music. A lot of the audience, they don't understand, even the educated ones, they forget why Tchaikovsky wrote Marcia Slav. And they forget, everybody knows the 1812 Overture, but they forget. And every piece has a story behind it.
Audience members are treated to a classical education at every concert, and frequently they are treated to the showmanship of diverse special guests. A popular addition to many concerts is the choir from St. Andrew's Academy, an Anglican college preparatory school from nearby Lake Almanor. Recently, the symphony flew in Irina Fedenko, an accomplished pianist from her homeland of Russia. She played in 3 concerts and even gave a lengthy recital to a private audience. Another recent guest was opera singer Heather Leary from Southern California, who moved the crowd with her stunning renditions. One of the most traditional ways orchestras connect to the general public is to produce an annual Pops concert that contains popular scores from Hollywood composers, appealing to a wider audience. Some of the community's most dynamic characters volunteer their time with the symphony, and many of the musicians have achieved an almost celebrity status among the locals. But perhaps the most dynamic of them all is retired General Dick Bendix, who on this night turned 80 years of age, yet is just as energetic as he's ever been.
Very blessed with good health, nice family, wonderful wife. I love living up in this area because I love to hunt and fish, and we camp a lot. It's just paradise.
Honoring General Bendix on his birthday with a comedy sketch is hardly unusual for symphony goers in Susanville. Almost from the beginning, Ray White was advising his gregarious friend on visual entertainment to be infused into their classical performances. The audience wouldn't expect anything less than Ben Wade replacing his baton with a sword while performing the theme from Pirates of the Caribbean. They cheered with excitement when the showman left his podium to interact with the guest soloist one night. The Susanville crowd expects a show, and they're never disappointed.
The first time I came up here, it was so amazing. I think the audience has so much to do with it. You know, they're so supportive, and you know, no matter good nights, bad nights, and everybody has good nights, bad nights. You know, they continue to support it, and it's amazing. And people in the audience who may play an instrument may not want to come to rehearsals, but then see the kind of reaction that the audience gives, and it's overwhelming. So they definitely want to be a part of it.
Appreciation and the acceptance of the community in Northern California is a big reason, because we were pretty skeptical in the beginning as to whether classical music would go over in Susanville, which is predominantly a ranching area. And to see it catch on the way it did, and the memberships grow every year, the community appreciates it, and we certainly appreciate the community.
We have grown, we have had incredible support. We have had a very accepting community. You know, the fact of the matter is, we're by no means a professional orchestra. That's not to say that at times we can't sound wonderful. But when you don't have a paid professional staff, what can you expect?
I think the bond with the orchestra, not only to Ben, but to the symphony itself, I think there are friends, families, loved ones up there on stage, and it's a small community, so people really have taken to it. And you know, there's been a void here of that, so I think that's part of it. But there's something special. It's not like a normal symphony where you go and people sit on their hands and kind of golf clap and that's the end and they walk away. They play great music, but there's just not that bond that we have here. And so that's what makes ours so special.
And the town has supported us so wholeheartedly, and that's been very big, and in such a small community. I think that probably per capita we have more percentage of season ticket holders than a lot of the bigger cities. So it's exciting.
Having nearly 500 ticket holders in a town this size is indeed remarkable. It's equivalent to 1.2 million New Yorkers holding season tickets for the New York Philharmonic.
It seems to be a big family affair, not only among the musicians, but amongst the community as well. They've embraced us and we've embraced them, and it's really a combined effort of everybody that's made this such a success, I think.
Playing in a professional orchestra, you know, has its ups and downs, but you know, more of the time it's not, you know, an interactive thing. You know, you do what you told, you sit there, and here it's completely different. You know, you have so much fun, and everybody gets along so well. It's a big family rather than, you know, it's a symphony, but it's a big family first and foremost.
And I've been completely impressed with what they've been able to accomplish, especially if we look at where we're at today, and to realize the membership that we have for the organization, to see the number of musicians we have, the quality of musicians we have, to see Ben Wade go, you know, I know how he was a couple years ago, and he was very good then, but now he's gone beyond good to professional level. I'd have to honestly say Ben is my favorite conductor, you know, in all the years that I've been an instrumental musician.
It was something that we needed here. People were starving for it, obviously. Every concert is sold out. And I just think it's, you know, the community has rallied behind all the musicians, and Ben's done a great job with it. He has a lot of charisma, and, you know, people stand behind him. And
he is the driving force, the Pied Piper, so to speak, behind all the work we've done here. And, you know, it's been a great affinity between the community and the orchestra and Ben.
I've worked with so many conductors who just beat time and they don't make any music. Well, the guy's a musical genius, I think, so far as being a conductor, and he treats us all with a lot of respect. He really does. No, it's just so much. I just can't even. The list is so long.
Gosh, I can't say enough about Ben. He was instrumental in starting the orchestra, of course. And I can think back to our first few rehearsals. There were 18 or 20 of us there. I think at our first concert, maybe we had 20 musicians. And we started off with, well, it was sort of complicated music, but it was pretty basic compared to what we're playing now. As the seasons went by, more accomplished musicians joined the symphony, and as our talent, our abilities increased, Ben brought on more and more difficult scores. I can remember in our fourth season, he handed out the music and several of us looked at it and said, he expects us to play this? I mean, we'd never seen music at this level before.
We're an amateur organization. We're going to miss notes, but I demand that they play with passion and power and beauty, and they make music and not just the notes. And too many professional orchestras are cookie cutter. They just play the notes, and I want them to play with passion.
He puts his touch on it, his impression, his feelings, the way he wants the passages to be played, and it just all seems to fall into place. But we are really blessed to have Ben as a conductor.
Everybody really works hard. You know, they want to make him happy and when he's happy, you know, he brings so much life and so much, you know, energy that I think people can't help but want to work for him.
I think it's because he brings this artistic quality to the music that I never got to this degree from any other conductors. It's just amazing. I'm thoroughly impressed with that.
Well, his passion for music, it's inspiring to everyone. And especially ever since he started composing pieces and we've been playing them, I think that makes the audience even more intrigued. As a mentor, yeah, I've learned a lot. I didn't know there was so much to conducting. It's beyond what I expected and pretty tough. But yeah, he's brought a lot to this town, and everyone loves him.
There's been some very generous people in this town who've helped build what we've built. So, people have donated a lot of time and energy and money and services. So it's helped us get where we're at.
We've got these great programs that we set up, scholarship programs, music in the schools programs, instrument repair. We've really done a lot.
We have several different programs, music in the schools, where we will send kids to music festivals in different towns, and we will support them for that. We support the kids and also the adults in private lessons. We bring in outside performing groups. We do instrument repairs. We do master classes for free where the symphony pays for a professional to come in and run 20 people at the same time. So anything that we can do to promote music in the community, especially with the youth, I think is imperative to the survival of classical music.
I think the future relies on the different parts that everybody brings continuing to work together. I know there's been pressure at times with rehearsal schedules or commitment time. I know that I have a very difficult time with my schedule, with being back in school and working full time, but I believe in this, so I try to give where I can, but I at times feel guilty for not giving the level I wish I could give.
Principal cellist Sarah Qualley has the highest GPA at the high school. She had the privilege of conducting one of the pieces during the Christmas concert to complete her senior project, a requirement for graduation. But the senior had some tough competition for graduating #1 in her class. She is currently tied for valedictorian with 2 other seniors. Fellow musicians, you may ask? Kelsey Knavel and Rebecca Sesmat play just a few feet away, in the violin section.
We try to have the biggest impact that we can on these young kids, because too many young kids in America see that music and this classical setting is becoming uncool. And what I try to have with this audience being so enthusiastic, almost like it's an athletic event, I try to have young people see that music can be cool, music can be fun, music can be passionate, and the classical symphony is not dead.
To maintain a strong orchestral program, it was vital to build an equally strong youth symphony to cultivate future musicians. Music teacher Susanna Blackwood offered to conduct in 2005, and the youth orchestra now has more members than the Susanville Symphony.
I think when we first started Roop Street Strings, probably about 8 years ago, we had about 6 or 7 people in it, and in the youth orchestra this year we had 27 string players. So it's pretty impressive how it's grown and how we've impacted the town and impacted the schools.
We have a youth symphony, and started out with like 20 kids, and now we've got like almost 60 out here this year. So it's grown a lot, and the kids, we have the programs in the schools are growing. We have 100 students in Janesville alone, which is a small grammar school, so it's up and coming. It's growing from the bottom up, which is good, and that's what you want as your foundation, because that's where the kids come from that will play in your orchestra.
I moved here and had to quit playing, and now we have a youth orchestra that we're even talking about splitting into 2 groups because it's so big. So hopefully, the youth in this town from little and on up, will be able to enjoy any instrument that they want to play and be able to play with other people and know what it's like to perform.
But with talented young players comes the inevitable fact that student musicians will graduate and move away, leaving a void in the symphony.
You have younger kids that go off to school, and older people that retire or something like that. I think the strings have a great teacher in Carol here, helping them get started and helping continue to motivate them. The youth orchestra is overwhelming. I think there were something like 60 players in it last year, and I'm sure it's just as big this year. So
about 5 or 6 kids from the high school that are playing with us now, and it's really nice to see the youth come up and play. And of course they graduate and move out, but that's part of the growth of the orchestra.
One of the orchestra's biggest losses this summer will undoubtedly be their top cellist.
I'm looking at Pepperdine in Malibu, Biola University in La Mirada. I've applied to a lot of UC schools like UC Davis, UC Irvine, UC San Diego. I see myself coming back in my later years, and maybe raising a family here. And I'd like to be in the symphony again.
But college graduation can also hit the symphony hard. They lose their top viola player at the end of the year as well.
I used to be a title officer at a title insurance company. I'm actually finishing up my master's right now in viola, so right now I'm just a student mainly and taking auditions everywhere, hoping to get a job. My husband and I were actually thinking of moving in May.
The resilient orchestra has survived twists and turns throughout their development. Their biggest blow came 2 years ago when their leader was promoted to head soccer coach at Southwestern Baptist University, nearly 2,000 miles away in Bolivar, Missouri.
When I took the coaching job in Missouri, we had to have a couple of assistant instructors to rehearse us until Ben came back. We just hope and pray that someday we'll get him back to Susanville when he can be here full time.
With Ben being absent so much, obviously we've had to have leadership within the community to carry on. But I think there was some clear vision from the beginning to recognize what was happening, what was possible.
The price was raised to $15 a concert and $65 for season tickets, and the town members eagerly paid. There were nearly 500 season ticket holders and sellout crowds every night, but revenue was still hard to come by.
There were a couple of years where we pulled in 40, 50, 60, something like that, and then our expenses are pretty high. We pay $10,000 at least a year for programs, $15,000 for the few musicians that we hire from Reno. My salary, my travel has increased a lot now that we've had to hire assistant conductors. We usually have about anywhere between $5,000 to $15,000 left over a year. We put that into CDs, and really what we're trying to do is we're trying to put that into a capital reserves to buy our own building.
Still playing at the same Methodist church at which they started, the small venue has given the audience a personal and intimate relationship with the symphony. But hundreds of symphony fans are being turned away due to the lack of space in the small church, despite expanding to 15 performances by just their 4th season.
I think it'll just get bigger and better, and we're just kind of looking for a bigger venue. Obviously, we need more room. We're kind of outgrowing where we're at now, and I would hope someday that would happen.
It depends on the commitment of the people around us that are working so hard for free to do what we're doing for our community. And I think the board has a vision and does not want to see this go away.
I think we're gonna need a new building, but it's gonna grow. I can see it growing.
Hard work from everybody involved, getting all these organizations to work together. It would be nice to get a performing arts center, not that that's our only goal, but that would be nice because there's a lot of people that could use it.
we've really played ourselves out of the venue, the Methodist Church where we're playing now. We give 5 concerts a year, but to accommodate the 600 plus people that come to a concert, we have to give 3 performances, which makes it difficult on the musicians.
We'd love to see a performing arts center, and that's one of our big goals. We have a lot of things we've in a 5-year plan we'd like to see. We would like to do a youth orchestra where kids can come from all of the different western states, and like an honors orchestra essentially under Ben's direction, and do a work a week together and then perform, and do master classes in conducting, all that kind of stuff. So that's the stuff we'd like to see for the future, but that's something that takes a lot of organization, larger than what they have right now.
The best option for us would be the Sierra Theater. It's an old-time theater built 60 years ago. It's gorgeous inside. It's just like what we would want for this small town to rally around this organization, and for us to get that theater one day would be something very special. I think it would enhance the experience. Instead of being in a church, it would be in a theater. I think it would be just great on a many different levels.
The symphony just got word that they're moving to the Assembly of God over on Richmond. But at the rate they're going, they're going to need to get to the Sierra Theater before long. Right now, they just don't have the money.
I always have a concern that we're at a crux right now. We're at the point where if we don't find a venue to play larger, people are going to start being put off because they can't get in, and then you're not satisfying your public. And when you don't satisfy your public, they have a tendency to forget you.